Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TapsTrades channel, where I help keep you up to date with all things Ecomi, VeVe, and the crypto space. I am very excited. I have a special guest here today. Help me in welcoming Ecomi, VeVe enthusiast, a New York Times best-selling author, and avid collector, Dan Schawbel. Thanks for hopping on, Dan.
Thank you so much, Taps. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for pronouncing my name right, because I've been haunted by Schawbel for such a long time. So it's you and Randy get it perfectly. So it makes me feel better.
No, I remember, like, I think I did a video and I covered how you were speaking about something with the collectibles or like that. And I remember you reached out to me, like, we were talking already in like a group chat, and you're like, just so you know, it's Schawbel, not Schwabel. And I was like, oh, good to know.
Yeah, I think I'm cursed because of Charles Schwab. That's what my uncle and dad says.
I mean, that's not a bad comparison to be accidentally confused for. So yeah, man, it's pretty cool. Like, and we were talking about this before we hopped on, and everyone who's in the chat, please hit that like button. Let the fam know that we're in here, because Dan is someone who is a leader in his space, and he's had many conversations with leaders in their space. Like, it's cool to be interviewing you because you've interviewed like 2,600 people or something, like probably more than that. So it's really cool to actually be on this side and get to actually have conversation with you for the fam to actually understand a little bit more about what led you to VeVe and a little bit about your success as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's been a great journey since August 31st, if we want to start there. I've got into crypto only in February, and I got in because another person you've heard of before, who you've met in person recently, Jeremiah, helped me get my own coin on Rally. So that kind of was my entry point into crypto. I always avoided it. I was like, I don't get this. I have other things going on. But when I felt very privileged to have my own coin, which is Workcoin, I was like, I better start learning about this stuff, because I have a competitive advantage. And you'll hear me say that a lot, right? I have an advantage here. So maybe it's time to learn. And I really put my head down. I spent like 10,000 hours learning as much as I can. I feel like I'm still a beginner, but even my friends who have been in crypto for, many years, like, I was teaching them something new, because I had gone so deep into it. And then, several months later, people were talking about NFTs, and I'm like, not for me, not for me, not for me. Like, I'm not going to just buy this thing on OpenSea and pay, a gas fee of $200. That's just not anything that interests me, right? Especially with so much other stuff going on. Like, I'm doing all these courses, and I've had books and speeches and research projects, and I have so much going on that was not what I want to get into, because I'd have to do so much more research on who is this artist and whatnot. So it's a little bit less clear. And I had no connection to that. I was not an art collector. Like, you might see, these statues behind me in the books, but if you look at the other walls, they're blank. Like, I don't collect artwork, but I respect people who do. So I was like, OpenSea, none of that's for me. And then August 31st, I was kind of looking online, and I saw the Spider-Man announcement, which had happened, I believe, 1 or 2 months before I saw it. And I was like, okay, well, Spider-Man is IP, the most popular character in the world, even though I wish Batman was. So I was like, this is something that's interesting. And so I started to kind of look into it, and I downloaded the app. And I'll always remember that I was in the parking lot ready to get my haircut, and I was looking through the app. I kind of delayed to get the haircut. Like, I was late to the haircut because of this. So I'm looking down, and I see the first thing that pops up was Captain America. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Obviously, Captain America is one of the big superheroes as well, an Avenger. Movies were great. And then I looked at Spider-Man, and I was like, wow, Spider-Man is twice the price. I don't know if I'm fully on board yet with this. Again, this was August 31st. And the thing about VeVe that is fascinating is, when you first get in, there is no historical reference. How am I supposed to know that, Spider-Man Secret Rare was at its complete floor when I joined? I had no idea, right? I'm seeing these numbers, and I have no idea what's worth what is worth what in relation to something else or anything. So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, Captain America is half the price. Okay, this is my first NFT, right? And I didn't know it was his first appearance or anything. I didn't have that next level of research. I'm just like, and we'll talk about this later too, very popular character, only 1,000. that probably matters, right? That was the initial view of it. And the reason why, after never having an NFT, I went for that one is because I'm like, okay, IP back, the probability that this goes to zero in the future, as long as NFTs aren't a fad, as long as, you know, Ecomi doesn't go under. Again, some of the things we'll talk about it soon as well. This is probably has a better shot than things that you would find on OpenSea. That was my mentality. And then literally within 24 hours, the next one I got was, I was at my parents' house, and my dad and I were kind of working through passport renewal. He's going through it. I'm still on VeVe, and I'm like, oh, like I probably should get a comic, because when I was a kid in the 80s and early 90s, I was collecting Batman comics, right? I had like most of the Knight's End series, you know, most famous for when Bane broke Batman's bat, which was in, you know, the movie. And, you know, I love that series. And that was the one I could afford as a kid. And so I look at the comics and I'm like, okay, well, and I didn't even look at Marvel Comics 1, actually, the first time I saw Amazing Spider-Man #1. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you know, Spider-Man's the most popular character in the world. This is the first issue. It wasn't the first appearance, but this probably matters. And it was relatively cheap back then. So I was like, that's my second one. And then I'll always remember, I went to bed that night. And again, this was still around the same 24 hours. And I was like, I should probably give that Spider-Man another look. And it turns out I woke up the next morning. Again, this is luck, right? I have no reference point. I didn't know that it came on the market for, what, $400 in the drop, and then went up to 2,000. Like, I didn't know any of that.
Rare, right?
Yeah, the secret, I had no idea, no reference point. So I get it, and it's literally at the floor of the floor. Like, unless you got on the drop, this was probably the cheapest you could get it. And I just got it because I'm like, you know, the probability, again, like I'm thinking about how can this thing fail? What, you know, as someone who's not just a collector, but also like, you know, this is real money we're talking about. And I want to make sure that it's more likely to succeed than fail. Let's just put it at that, right? And so those were my first three, and that kind of set me off on this journey. And, you know, much like interviewing people, Taps, you know, the deeper I get into someone's background, I want to get more excited about them. And the deeper I get into VeVe, the more excited I get about it. And I think that's cool. And literally like almost every day, there's another thing that reinforces what I kind of knew initially. So it's almost like reinforces this thesis I have about the importance of IP and the connection I have to my childhood, and just being in a really cool position right now after, you know, paying my dues for many, many years, you know, over almost 2,800 interviews, you know, last year, I'll give you an example. Like, I'm still hustling after all these years. Like, I reached out to over 70 companies as someone who's already made it, reached out to over 70 companies and pitched them cold emailing. Like I always tell you, cold emailing. And it literally changed the face of my company this year, just because I was willing to take a step back and literally send all those emails. And that's really the game. You want to interview people, reach out to people. Kevin Smith. So part of the reason why I'm like, I totally respect you is because when you pointed that out on your show, Kevin Smith took me like 8 to 10 years to book. Like, really? I'm willing to put years in. It's a miracle that I got like 45 minutes of his time. It took me so many years. And so I'm willing to put that much time in and following up. If someone says no or they don't respond, I put it in my calendar. I'll reach back to you in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year. Like, I just don't give up with this stuff. And that's why I have such a roster of people I've interviewed, is because it's this kind of never give up mentality that I bring to everything that I do. And it's the same with this. Like, how do I learn? How do I get deeper into the community? So you'll see me in the app, you know, liking and commenting on the app. And I don't need to do any of this, right? Like, but I feel like being part of the community, as well as getting the collectibles and OMI, like, I feel like all of this stuff, when combined, like you said early on, is, you know, have OMI, but also have the collectibles. Like, it gets you deeper in, and you really understand how everything is connected, and that becomes more powerful from an investor and a collector and everything across the board. So that's kind of my entry point, and everything has been iterated since then. I've been paying very close attention to human behavior. I'll give you examples if you want. I have 3 awesome examples.
Real quick,
first
before
one,
we get to those examples, I was like, I just got to jump in real quick, because he said a lot of things that I definitely wanted to touch on. And shout out to Reslan. Thank you for the super chat. But we've got a lot of fam in here. But it's really cool to hear how you came to be like you said, August 31st. Like if people who, I know there's some people who are just, subscribers to my YouTube, and I love my subscribers on YouTube, but not everyone's on Twitter. So there's people in the community that a lot of people aren't aware of. And like I've covered, yourself and like doing some of your videos on YouTube, but Dan is very, very active on Twitter. And it's really cool to hear, I guess, like how you came to start your VeVe journey. Like you've already been a collector for, decades, and you've already been kind of interviewing. I was showing a quick picture while you were talking about it, but it blew me away that, you've had interviews with like Kevin Smith and Tom Bilyeu, and multiple interviews over multiple years with Gary Vee, Raekwon. I mean, you have a massive, Terry Crews, just an absolute massive connection to tons of really large influencers, celebrities, and leaders in their spaces because you're a leader in your own right. Like you have a lot of success that, there's all walks of life, right? Like there's new investors, there's new collectors who've come to VeVe, and then there's record producers and artists and all kinds. But when I think of who's going to have the most impact to help us also kind of bridge to, these larger mainstream audiences, I definitely think of you pulling up your phone to show Kevin Smith and Gary Vee, look at my Spider-Man that I got on VeVe. And that was back when you were like still kind of newer, right? So it is cool to kind of hear how you jumped in to your journey and to have you as such a passionate asset to the community. So I wanted to touch on that and show some of your success for those who are kind of like, all right, who is this guy, right? Well, Dan is a very avid collector now in a very short stint, I guess, of time. And it's cool to at least kind of understand how you started. And I'm extremely jealous that you sniped Secret Rare Spider-Man off the floor, because that is still to this day one that I don't own.
Well, Taps, it also goes even deeper than this, right? It's like, if you look at early in my career, like we had talked about, when it comes to personal branding, I mean, like I had the first personalbrandingblog.com, like personal branding magazine. Like I built an entire world around personal branding before it was cool or people even understood about anything about it. I was writing the original, how do you build your personal brand on LinkedIn type articles on Mashable, back when Mashable was like the hottest property with TechCrunch. So like very, very rich history. I own personalbranding.com. Like it's documented that was my thing. There's, 3 books. The first book that I wrote when I was a young lad was this first one. This is Me 2.0. This is the advanced reader copy that authors get before the book comes out, that, you send the media to hopefully give a review to the book. So this came out in 2009. So in a sense, if you think about the real skill set here, I'm more of the trendsetter, whereas, I put out a workplace trends forecast every year. I knew personal branding was going to be really successful. This was an international bestseller. My books are in 17 languages. Like I knew this was going to be successful, right? And I haven't felt the same. This means a lot to my friends too, who always make fun of me. They're like, when's Me 3.0 coming out? You have no idea. It was like bullying at that point because I had so many people say that to me. I actually think the world we're heading to, and I know we're skipping, I'm pretty pumped about this. I think the world we're heading to is a Me 3.0. And I wouldn't have said that about any other time ever. And that means a lot because if you look at my history about knowing where the trends are and connecting the dots, I think that the metaverse and NFTs and all of this combined is going to be, and what Jeremiah says is Web 3.0. And I think as individuals, we're heading into Me 3.0, where we're going to have our digital avatars and we're going to use them in meetings. We're going to use them in metaverses. Everything's going to be connected. And so the way I felt about personal branding back in the day was this, and this is what's really cool. So between high school and college, I had 8 internships. In college, I had 7 leadership positions. During interviews, I would have a CD portfolio of work, which ages me. I had a business card with my picture on it. I had a website. I had all these things to help sell me. I didn't say personal branding back then. It wasn't until I started a blog back in 2006 called Driven to Succeed, where I help people with career advice, that where I started to understand the value of blogging. So if you want to know the true essence to all of this, it was me writing, 12 articles per week. It was me starting a magazine, doing that. I designed it. I got over 100 contributors. I built that from scratch. So I was doing all of this at once while having a full-time job at a company called EMC, which was acquired by Dow. It was Fortune 200 company at the time. And when I was at this company outside of work, I was building my brand. I was doing all of these things like writing blog posts, till 3 a.m, 12 a week, right? And I had no idea it was going to become anything, right? But I did believe in personal branding. And it was because I read an article called The Brand Called You, which is the reason why anyone knows about Fast Company magazine today. It was written by a man called Tom Peters. And in the article, it said, you have to be the chief marketing officer for the brand called you, right? We were entering the age of digital branding. And whereas that article came out 10 years before, I recognized that with all the social media and the wave of people building online profiles, that, hey, we all have a brand. We all, Coca-Cola can have a Facebook page, Taps can have a Facebook page, right? We're kind of on this interesting playing field where everything is branded. And not in a negative way, hey, let's build our reputation to be known for something so that we can be recognized and that can help elevate our lives, especially our careers, right? And so the way I think about this now, the second I read that article by Tom Peters, my whole life, I knew I was going to be successful because I had already been doing what he said in that article. And part of what he said in the article from a career standpoint, and I'll show you how this connects in a second, is the smartest people will create their own unique positions within their company. And that's what I did at EMC. I got a profile in Fast Company magazine. The company had no idea what I was doing outside of work. They recruited me to be the first social media. I wrote my job description to be the first social media person in the company, right? And then that inspired me to write the first book and then start a company and then another book and then all this other stuff that I've done, because the core was the skill set that I developed and being able to communicate that through blogging, through books, through all these different mediums to be able to get that across, through courses, through everything to get it across. But when I read that article, I knew that it was going to be successful. I had to survive so much bullying and criticism. And you see all these online comments sometimes of people on YouTube and everything. I had to survive all of that. And it didn't matter because I had such conviction. And when I talked to Dan Crothers, when I first joined, he had that same conviction. Right. And that's part of what brought me in as well. So again, that's another reinforcement. It's, hey, I can relate to them because I know the suffering and what it takes to at least build something. I'm not saying
you related with them as well, right? Like you saw that they're ahead how you were ahead back then, right? So basically, like it's like what I'm summarizing, I guess what I heard was you kind of saw what the big picture, what the writing on the wall was going to be. And even though everyone doubted you and there's probably a lot of naysaying and you had all the real life trolls, not just the actual, social media troll telling you that, hey, this isn't the way it's going to go or isn't working, but you actually called it and obviously have found a lot of success through it. So are you saying,
I called remote working too. And
is that kind of how you see like VeVe with the digital collectibles space? And then also that kind of brings up a whole, like, we're going to jump around. I know. We're going to jump around today. We're going to get into it, but
there's so much.
Like you're a marketing, very, very like a marketing genius, right? Like you clearly saw what was happening and you understand kind of how to build brands and how to advertise oneself, one's brand. So I guess what is your thought pattern on not just how the IPs and brands are doing it through VeVe? Like obviously there's a lot of value for them, but also for like how VeVe can build their brand into the mainstream. And then what does that mean going forward into the VeveVerse and Metaverse, right? Like, is that something that we can leverage to build our brands? I know that's like a 3-layered tiered cake for you to get through, but just want to lay it out for you.
For sure. So basically, if you think about trends, so this one was, hey, we all have a personal brand. Now we have social media tools to be able to market that brand. This one was, hey, generations are here to stay. Millennials versus Gen Z versus boomers, that whole generational conversation, that was that one. And then we had a pandemic, but this book on how to connect in the age of isolation when people are spending less time together in 2018 was before that one. So I think about, when I think about this, I have not had as much conviction about where we're entering than I had when I was 22 with personal branding. It's a complete comparison.
Wow.
For me to even talk like this shows you that no matter, again, like even if I say, oh, I wish this happened, or I wish the secret rare had a white background, like these are like little things, right? The reality is you watch my behavior and now you know that I'm on board, meaning like someone like me is not going to just comment in the app saying good job if I wasn't on board. Someone like me is not going to post on Facebook if he's not on board. Someone like me is not going to, go off brand and do a YouTube, interview like this that's not about workplace and employment and my normal topics if I wasn't on board. Meaning like my behavior, no matter what I say, shows you that I think that this is special.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key. I mean, because no matter what someone says, Taps, I don't mean to cut you off. No matter what someone says, so if someone's like, I'm pissed about the drop or whatever, let's compare what they say with their actual activity on the app or on social media, right? And you'll see that they're still going to go for the drops because people know it's awesome, right? Yep. And things have enforced this. Like, my girlfriend and I sitting in Copley in Boston, and she's like, what, Batman or Superman? She's like, I'm going to get Batman. And, Todd, for people who in this community that know that. And she's sitting down, she downloads the app and gets Todd under 2 minutes. No crypto experience, not very tech savvy, has an iPhone with a button on it, which ages it, of course. And so to me, that was a reinforcement. Another reinforcement was I was filming this big, so I do LinkedIn courses.
Just real quick, what was it that because like there's a lot of power in that, right? Like I'm not like, is she like an avid collector before that? Is she an avid Batman fan, or she just got it and understood it as like a smart investment? And then because like Todd, I think back then was probably about 500 gems, so $500, right? So I guess what was that where it clicked for her, right?
I think it was a combination of my conviction. I couldn't shut up about it, right? and because I'm not normally like this, to be honest. So if I'm this pumped about something, like that would indicate to someone who's in my network, hey, I should at least give this a shot or at least look at it, right? And I think she likes Batman more than Superman, so it's a preference. And I think that even though she wasn't convinced about NFTs, I think that she doesn't look at it completely as an NFT. Meaning, like, I think that part of the genius in the app is it's so good you won't even know it's an NFT. Oh, the product's so good you don't even know that it's backed by OMI coin. So that's part of the magic of this whole thing. The fact that someone could just get on and within a few seconds do it. Another example for you. I was with my production crew doing a course, and there was a drop happening at 11. I'm on the East Coast, and I'm like, hey, like we're gonna start filming. I gotta go for this drop. No joke. And they're like, wait, what drop? And I'm like, what's an NFT? And they're like, what's an NFT? And literally, they dropped the whole, oh, is this an NFT or what's an NFT within -2 seconds, and they went for the drop. They didn't get it, but they were still hooked even if they didn't get it. But I do think if you do get your first drop, you're really hooked, right? Oh, so yeah. There's different levels of being hooked. My girlfriend's gotten 3 out of 4 drops. So it gets hard to argue when you start getting drops, when you start to see, how the value accumulates. And I think that's what makes it really interesting too. And that creates the speculation and whatnot. But the other example, and the one that you'll probably love as a business person, is my friend who I also got into this. He pushed me back. He's like ignoring my text messages about like getting certain collectibles. He's like, oh, I don't know. And I just kept pushing. And then I got to a point where I'm like, I can't let my friend miss this opportunity. I called him and I'm like, do it. And he did it. And so then he was happy he did it. But one of the things that he did is he got an Elsa. And so when he got the Elsa, I told him, I'm like, there's a very interesting business aspect to this that's being overlooked among other things that we talk about. And that's, well, the normal thing you do with clients around the holidays, let's say, is you take them for dinner. But that's happening maybe a little less during COVID, right?
Right.
So obviously I'm hugely bullish on NFTs as like a Christmas or a Hanukkah or any holiday gift. But what he did was he said, hey, I'm trying to land this client at Disney. I'm just going to get, and this was bold, I'm just going to give him an Elsa. So literally gives an Elsa to a prospect, closes the deal for millions of dollars.
That's brilliant. That's
so,
I mean, like,
and potentially it could be a tax write-off, a marketing expense.
That's I wouldn't even consider. I mean, there's utility right there just for you as like if you're going after a brand as like if you're in sale, I guess it would be more if you're going after it for your own business. But at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of value, and it's a conversation piece as we've seen with everything. Like actually, when I was at the live event with Jeremiah Yang, where we did he had like an NFT local thing in the Bay Area, which I thought was brilliant. Like he said, like Miami's doing their thing and all these other states doing thing, but like this is like the tech hub, and like we should have an NFT culture here. I was like, 100% brother. But we were showing in like onboarding new VeVe users at this event, and of course, what did he pull up? He pulled up Elsa to show how beautiful it was, like the detail, and like I didn't even think I've thought about it for like networking, but for actually like using it as a business tool is brilliant. That's really cool to hear.
100%. And what we said before this interview, I was listening to him in the Women of VeVe conversation, and he says he nails it. This is bringing families together. I think he absolutely nailed it, right? I do drops with my girlfriend, like, I'm not going to be able to get my parents involved. Like they're kind of checking, they're in their 70s. They just want to enjoy life and not be bothered by some of this stuff.
Like
but I'm just saying, what I'm saying is I definitely see that. And I think that, because having collectibles, having these things, creates commonalities between us. It can, hopefully bring more people together, relationships, etc. I wouldn't have even known you if I wasn't in this space. So, even we take a lot of this stuff for granted, right? We're like, oh, what's the value of this, collectible? Well, I think the value of friends, especially as you get older, becomes more valuable than a lot of these collectibles, right? Like when you're 90, maybe you're going to go for a drop when you're 90. Well, you probably will if you're doing less. But in reality, like the thing that you're really going to care about is, hey, who's still in my life? What stories can I share with these people? Hey, can you believe that, a certain amount of years ago, we were all doing this and look where it is now? Like that's fun, right? And so I'm here. Why am I here? I'm here because it's fun. There's nostalgia for my childhood. I'm here because, I'm getting to meet people like I love we love Batman. We like, and plus we like business, right? And like we're in crypto and NFT. So everything is kind of compiled into this thing, but I also wrap it around the bow because I think that this is the new frontier. I think this is me 3.0, web 3.0. This is the way the world's going. And when I look at, and I know that you were asked on Twitter, like, what does Dan think about Recur and all these things? The reality is, I do think Gary was right. Like, I think multiple can win, but my incentive is not to do multiple. My incentive is how do I maximize what I think is the thing that works best for me. Let's say that. The thing where no matter what I think, I'm either proven wrong or or what I say is proven right in a sense where, I think of, and we can go through some of these too. I think this will be a lot of fun. Like, I love this new one that I was thinking about today. Like, do we have Pokemon? Everyone says when Pokemon. So so that was one of the things. Like, I think that if we didn't have Pokemon, it would hurt the company. That's just my opinion because Pokemon's the number one collectible. So long, yeah. It's the number one collectible. Why? And so here's my reason. I'll just walk you through some of the psychology. Why would Alcon and David Yu, why would they even bother doing this without Pokemon? Like, it actually makes them look bad. And these people are like coming out of retirement. Like this is maybe their final phase of their career potentially if they want to carry this through to the future. Why would they do it without Pokemon? And then why would Disney or Marvel sign with them? As a business person, when I give sales presentations, and again, this is not confirmed, of course. It's not on Twitter. It's not official. I'm just going through how I'm thinking about it. Is is why would they want to have how could they have this reputation and not deliver on Pokemon? Why would they even start it without Pokemon? How do they get Marvel and Disney without Pokemon? You know, if I create a presentation for sales, I'm going to have Pokemon blown up as most of the slide, and then Marvel is going to beg me to put their logo to the right instead of the left of Pokemon because they like it being on the right. So that's how I think about Pokemon. Other
That's
things,
a really good point. I mean,
I'm very confident about Pokemon. I would bet you money right now. I'm super confident. It would be too embarrassing to these leaders to not have Pokemon.
It would be like if Elon Musk decided to sign on for another company and then he wasn't able to secure the Tesla license. Like, yeah, it just doesn't. 100%. That's a really good point. And then when you bring up the fact that like, oh, like you'd have it blown up like Pokemon and like a small Marvel logo, they kind of 100%. Did that. And like back in 2018, you know, David Yu was walking around like a big NFT conference and like how he was describing NFTs and VeVe collectibles. He was talking and he had Pokemon up there, even though it wasn't confirmed and still isn't confirmed. But he was talking about Pokemon. And so that's a really good point that it's an expectation at this point for them in the NFT space that they have it for those who are in the know, and they've built up decades of experience. So it's kind of like, it's going to be a pretty big egg on their face if they don't have it. But I'm also extremely, extremely bullish on the fact that they have it. It's just a matter of time and how it's rolled out in whether it's the collectible card game first, which David Yu has a current license with one of his other companies, or it could be the collectibles. But yeah, I wasn't going to touch on the Pokemon, but I'm happy to hear you do so. I mean, and one thing I did want to ask, because you know, you kind of described like what your current role is with the community, but can you broaden on that a little bit more? And then I guess, where do you see VeVe going to in the future? Because you seem like someone who invests in something for like a long period of time. Like that's how you become a successful entrepreneur. So I guess your role in the community, and then long-term, how does VeVe evolve and where do you see it going to?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's a collector, right? This is fun for me. I get to meet new people, exchange ideas. I think because I think this is the future, like I think I can learn from everyone. Like I think of everything, and you know my background, right? Like I do qualitative and quantitative, meaning like I do survey. I've done 60 research studies, over hundreds of thousands of people interviewed in 26 countries. So that is quantitative data. And then I also interview tons of people, which is qualitative data. So when I look at thinking about collectibles and comics and all this stuff on VeVe, the way I look at it is, okay, well, I need to collect the quantitative data. So quantitative data would be, you know, Ecomi wiki. It would be cherry charts. It would be that type of data, right? That's there for me that I can look at and say, okay, here are the larger trends, and just kind of like looking in the marketplace to get a sense of what's going on. And I'm not just saying this for comics and collectibles. I mean, watching you, like watching a bunch of the creators and friends that we have, just to get a sense of what's going on. But then there's also the qualitative data. And this is where the real effort is. This is where, you know, I'm in social media, I'm on the app, I'm trying to get a sense of, you know, pain points and what people like and their preferences. I'm just trying to eat up as much of that as possible, because the qualitative and the quantitative together gives me such a rich picture that I feel like I can make the best decisions possible. So that's how I think about that. And if I can share some of these things with you and other people, maybe, you know, I don't consider myself a content creator for VeVe. I'm a content creator, but I feel like if I can, you know, come up with certain ideas or phrases or concepts or, you know, kind of like market trends, maybe that can help you and other people, right? So like I'm more of like the empowering cheerleader. So I think that, and I thought about this a lot actually this year, is like, I think that the two things, like the people who don't like me would say, hey, at least he works really hard and he persevered. But I think the other thing is my friends, like if I were to have a, you know, it's weird to say this, it's very morbid. Like if I were to be dead, they would say, hey, he was our champion. So I think that I'm naturally, as a self-help writer who's written thousands of articles in business and self-help, like I'm naturally geared to how do I pump up Taps? How do I pump up, you know, everyone in the community? How do I get people, excited. How do I congratulate people who got drops? Like that's naturally me. I'm not trying to figure out how to make money off all that. Like I don't need to. I have my own business, and I'm not saying that's bad either. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a business that corresponds to VeVe and Ecomi. Like do whatever you want. I'm just saying me personally, I see myself as kind of investor, a cheerleader, someone who's trying to learn. There's so much I don't know. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough too. Part of why I was like, Jeremiah, I'll have my own coin, I'll get involved, is because it's something I didn't know and it was an opportunity to learn. I haven't learned about comic books in a long time, but now, I'm learning a lot more and it's set me on a new path, right? As well as everything else that we're going to see in the future. Metaverses, it's so new. And so to answer your question and where this is all going is kind of how I want to see, my goal hopefully is to connect both ends, right? How do I connect collectibles, Ecomi, VeVe, VeveVerse with what I actually do in my career? And so as I think about this, and as I think about the real value add in the future, right now, hopefully you and others get value. But the real value is how do I get a space in the VeveVerse, much like Second Life. So I created this first social media position and I connected with HR in the company, and they were doing career fairs, interviews, recruiting in Second Life. Now,
Really?
Second Life was before its time, meaning like that's, you could say that's somewhat the first metaverse that became popularized, especially in the business world, where it's kind of remarkable. Back in the day, we're talking like 2007, 2008, these big companies were willing to take that risk to even do that. So to me, in my head, I'm like, okay, if they were willing to do that back then, what are they willing to do now, especially when the frameworks, the architecture, the technology, the mainstream acceptance is there? So I think about that, but the applications made sense to me back then. And there's no reason why I can't have a building where I'm doing a career fair and I'm bringing my clients, it's all unemployment. I can bring an Amazon, I can bring all these massive companies to recruit in the VeveVerse in my land and my building. Like maybe it's called the Schawbel Career Center or something, right? It's these things that I've always thought of, but I think that this could be a unique way to present them and create value, right? So I have the brands, as long as I continue to connect and build bridges, I can potentially fuse all aspects of my career together. And the way I see that playing out is potentially in a VeveVerse.
Absolutely.
But in order to get to the VeveVerse, you have to go along this path, right? The path of being a champion in the community, adding value, getting the collectibles, understanding the dynamics. Like there's a lot that's like all these prereqs to set you up to get potentially land and then to build something in which you can add your unique value, and everyone can add their unique value. And that's what makes this special.
Absolutely. And it's funny to hear someone talk about Second Life. Like I haven't thought about Second Life, I think since I was in high school, right? Like it's been quite some time, but yeah, that really was kind of the first metaverse. And I had no idea that it actually had an entire business take come to it. But when you think about the metaverses, like which ones will do well, I mean, there's going to be a need for that big IP, right? Like people want to actually spend time in the actual digital Disneyland. Like they want to go to the actual digital Jurassic Park and they want to look truly best. Like I've seen some people in the community who are getting into like VR and like they're wearing some VR heads, I think it's called VR chat, and they're having fun with it. And that's just the first like iteration of it, right? Until we actually have some haptics and more of like the ability to actually be a community, not just typing and hopping on calls, but actively engaging with each other through that way. And I do see VeVe being a big pillar in like what's going to be the first strong iteration to the masses actually being able to do it, especially since crypto is such a barrier for the masses, right? So like it's cool to hear you kind of speak about that and like knowing that you're in the community and like have that foresight to think, all right, like what I see my role being is to basically everything I do today to helping secure something in the VeveVerse that I can continue that brand and continue to spread awareness through that metaverse that we're all going to love and exist in. And that's Absolutely brilliant. I love it. And actually, there's been a lot of great super chats in here, but I think this is a really brilliant one. And I would love to hear your take. I'd actually like to
Okay.
hear Dan's wish list of things he'd like to change, have Ecomi do differently based on his business.
Wow. Yeah. So Jeremiah, so I was actually going to get to this too. Like, so there's a lot of different things I came up with of, hey, how could this fail, right? As a business person, like, how do I eliminate risk? Like, if I'm really going to put I put so much time into this, like aside from my business and everything else I do, I want to make sure, hey, I'm comfortable with doing this and I feel like it has a future, right? And so one of the things was people complaining about why it takes so long for MTL and immutable and everything, right? Like, oh my God, like you told me it was going to be 2 months ago and we're still waiting. Is this ever going to happen? We're losing faith. Like, honestly, if you think about all the complaints that you see in the app, on social media, and everywhere else, like that one's super consistent. So Jeremiah and I were talking about it. I had originally mentioned it on Twitter, but then like Jeremiah brought it to my attention. I'm like, yeah, totally agree. Like, I think that a solution to people feeling more confident about things getting done is on the website to have a status bar, right? So picture the website and picture status, the first status bar is MTL, because based on my analysis of people's complaints and worries and everything, MTL is really high up there. It could be the first most important one, because people are like, oh, I've had cash in here for so long, I need to get it out. So why not have a status bar that says, it doesn't have to say a date. Actually, I think we need to remove dates. That's where everyone gets in trouble. Instead of dates, it's, hey, we're 68% done. And then we check back in a week and it's 72%. Like that, setting like honestly, even with my own business, it's all about setting expectations. My sales calls are not, I'm not even selling people. I'm just like, here's the expectation. And I think that's so important. And because it's really hard, here's the reason why dates are hard. It's really hard to say this Metaverse is going to launch in Q2 or Q3 of next year because it hasn't been done. Cabell said this too. It's never been done before. All these things. Like, we don't know, but at least can you give us a status bar to give us a sense of where you are in terms of completion? And I think just that little, like, I don't know if it's a little thing from a technical standpoint, who's going to own it and all that stuff. But even that, I feel like would give people more faith and feel good. But at the end of the day, the faith really comes back to, hey, do you trust this team? No matter what I say, it's, if you trust the team, it kind of voids a lot of these concerns. It really does. But I would say, that one. And then the other thing I thought about Taps that I came out on Facebook, and, even people who don't agree with me agreed with me on this, is one of the big concerns I had early on, and people have talked about, is, hey, are these licensors going to renew? So Marvel, for example, great one. I am fully confident that Marvel is going to review. And again, like, this has nothing to do with the collectibles. The comics, to me, is the simplest way to explain this. If you're Marvel, you're not going to give VeVe some of the biggest grails in your company. Everything is calculated. Everything. This 8 comic is going to be releasing on that Tuesday for a reason. A show's coming out. They want to pump up the Kang low mint for a reason. He's going to be the next big bad guy. We need to pump him up by giving a low mint. Like, everything is thought out. This is not random. There's a big content calendar. Everything's approved by Marvel. Anytime anyone says, well, I don't know if this is the first Spider-Man, in the app, online, Marvel's first NFT, Spider-Man. That everything's approved. Everything's approved. With the comics, especially though, you're not going to have Marvel say, hey, we're going to give 3 or 4 of the top comics we've ever produced, the most valuable ones. We know they're the most valuable ones. We're not going to give those to VeVe and then in 2 or 3 years say, hey, a competing company, we're going to give you these, 20,000, because, if you get those like 20,000, are you going to be able to have the same utility as VeVe? So like the people who have some of the grails and great ones on VeVe, they might not want those other ones because you can't bring those interoperable. They're not interoperable. So you're not going to be able to bring those into the VeVe app. And that's part of the genius with Immutable. because you can list them on OpenSea, you can list them on Immutable, but there's no utility until you bring them back to the app. So to me, it would be so stupid for Marvel not to renew based on the comics alone, because you're not going to want to have some of your Grails here, some of your other comics here and here and here, and spread them all out, right? You're going to want them to be in your Newbury Comics bookstore, which is, VeVe, right? It's where you get all your comic books, DC Comics, everyone. This is your one-stop shop with comics. You're not going to want to spread that out. So to me, I'm very confident, and there's other reasons too, but I'm very confident on that just for the comics alone. Again, I'm not saying anything bad about the collectibles. The comics, to me, in many ways, are very straightforward taps because they reflect physical, like all the physical goods. And I know, of course, the things behind me reflect the physical goods too, but I'm just saying, like, the comics is just one example of why I think they're going to renew. They're not going to want to spread comics through different platforms and worry about interoperability. And also, the other thing is too, we have a well-oiled machine. Oh, the next comics Tuesday, next comics Wednesday, next comics Thursday. Soon there'll be 10 comics a week, right? And like the drop mechanism's done. Are they going to risk giving a competitor the ability to drop a comic when if that's not proven? That's not safe for them to do. Put it in the well-oiled machine and keep pounding those comics out, because that is safer for you to do. You already have the audience there, and then other people will go and know where to get comics instead of being like, well, you want the Bronze Age, you're going to have to go to this platform, the silver. That would be stupid. So to me, I'm good with that. That's another one I'm good with. These aren't real NFTs one. To me, even if you call them digital collectibles, that's a massive win. In Asia, you brought this up too, which was brilliant, and they brought it up, which is also smart, is NFTs turn them off. But if you say digital collectible, that resonates, and they're more likely to want to work with you. And Asia is a massive market. So for me, that's that. And also Immutable will avoid that as well. So we get rid of those. The other one is this a rug pull or a scam? Sometimes people will say that. In my opinion, why would these executives go out? It's almost like, you're an artist. You don't want your last concert to be horrible. You don't want to be like, viewed as a failure, in the last part of your basketball career, right? So like they want to go out on a high note. They don't want to go out and tarnish their multi-decade career by screwing people over. That's not, it's just, and the second part is that the IP is the insurance policy.
Yep.
You think, our lawyers are like peanuts if we were to even think about doing that, right? Peanuts. Disney has like their lawyer base is like bigger than the US Army, and that's an exaggeration, but you get the point. So what I'm saying is they don't want the wrath of over 130 masters, aka licensors, if they were to try anything. So that's knocked off. The other concern I had, Taps, and I know I'm rattling off a lot, but I hope you're enjoying this.
Oh, I'm loving it. I'm just like ready to jump in when you get to the last point.
I know.
Right.
I can't wait. So here's a good one. One of the big concerns I had early on, especially because it was my first NFT getting into this ecosystem, was, are NFTs going to be a fad? Like if people don't like them in the future, that could be a huge problem for us, right? So the reason why I don't care about that anymore is a few stats. In the first half of 2021, 2.5 billion in sales for NFTs. Then in Q3, 10.7 billion in sales for NFTs. And then obviously there's VeVe has their numbers. I'm just saying overall. And then Coinbase has a waiting list of over 2.4 million people waiting to get NFTs. They don't even know what they are.
Yep.
So yeah, it's hard. I mean, and digital property just makes sense because we're moving more digital. So that one's gone too. Why is everything taking so long? We talked about that. Why can't people get a drop? Because you're competing against, infinite amount of people to get the drop. So that, just keep trying and eventually you'll get one, and hopefully it'll be a good one. If it's not, at least you got something, right? Like just be grateful we can even do this.
I have another FUD that always pops up, and like I've addressed it, but it would be good to have you address it since you've been crushing the FUD. Like, we'll be the FUD buster. I'm just going to say, like, talk to Dan. So you said a lot of things that I like and completely agree with. Like, I didn't even, I think you brought up about the renewal side. Like they have to renew these licensors, but when you think about it, like it's a well-oiled machine. Like you said, like Marvel's has a digital comic business already online, but you don't hear about it, you don't see about it, you don't see a community built around it. And the amount of money that they are making twice a week is obscene, because a lot of that money doesn't go to VeVe, it goes back to the licensor for them to leverage that brand and that IP. And so it is, I mean, that's why they tweet it out every single week, right? Like they're crushing with it. So it makes sense. Like I'd be like, where do I sign? How do I sign a 10-year deal versus a 3 or a 5-year deal, right? So I completely agree with you there. And the piece that I think always pops up for FUD, and I've touched on it time and time again, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too, is everyone is saying, well, okay, clearly VeVe's made it and they're going to continue to make it. But what happens if they get acquired, right? Like I have my own 2 cents about the fact that they're going to be acquiring, that, you know, mergers could happen, and that look at their success and what they've built up, and Alcon having this as a swan song. Like there's a lot of elements that I've touched on in the past, but I would love to hear what are your thoughts on addressing some of that FUD, but also just kind of reassurance.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. I mean, when I think about who would acquire this, I've removed Disney. I've removed basically the IP companies from it, because from a competitive standpoint, it could get too complicated. And I think Foster had mentioned that, and I agreed. You know, that's a really strong case against a company that owns IP buying a company like VeVe. I think, I mean, the one that Jeremiah and I think is Coinbase, right? And again, I'll go get to your fund in a second, but here's the whole idea with Coinbase. So think of VeVe. VeVe is, hey, we're for everyone, right? We're like the mainstream NFT. If you don't know what an NFT is, you're good with us, right? The prereq is like you have a phone, and then eventually you just have a computer when they have desktop, right? So this is easy. You can get a collectible in 30 seconds. Again, I told you, girlfriend bought it collectible in like a minute. So that's a piece of cake. And so if you think about Coinbase relative to a Binance or a KuCoin or all the other exchanges, even, you know, the ones that OMI is on, are even more, a little bit more complicated, right? Those wouldn't be a good fit for VeVe, but Coinbase is made for the person who is not an expert at crypto, doesn't know the dynamics, but wants to get a Bitcoin or whatever they want to do from a basic standpoint. And that's and nothing negative about Coinbase at all, actually. Like, I think it serves its purpose for the mainstream customer, just like VeVe serves for the mainstream customer. So if I'm Coinbase and I, you know, have studied the market and I understand all the NFTs in the ecosystem, I'm gonna, again, it might not be acquire, but I'm gonna think about VeVe, because we're both trying to do the same thing in different ways. And then I love what we said. I think his vision, again, there's multiple visions for this company, right? Like there's a fandom for everyone. And like, this is, you know what I mean? So there's a lot that's like a David Yu thing, which I agree with. But what we said it might even be bigger, which is, hey, you know, people are buying NFTs on ETH and Sol. Like we want to replace ETH. We want to replace Sol as #1 for NFT. Like with OMI, like that to me is super visionary, especially because we've seen those coins and you know, people, you know, spending so much money on OpenSea. So to me, that's pretty big. That's pretty big vision. And so I think that, yes, I think these people, they've worked so hard. Listen to their stories, listen to their pain, you know, like, you know, I think Dan says he works like 30 hours a day, and like, and there's 24 hours in a day, right? Like these people are working so hard. Do you think they're just going to sell it? And they're already, here's the other key thing. So I love to look at, you know, Zuckerberg or I forgot the guy's name who owned, God, what's that company? You know, with the yellow icon, the social media company that I don't use, not TikTok. What's the other? Snapchat. So these people have a chance to sell for like billions of dollars, but they were already successful. As in, like, if someone was, you know, real rags to riches and didn't inherit money or have family money or whatever, like for sure they would have probably sold it, right? Because generation of money for the family, they didn't, you know, there wasn't as much of a pressure to sell. Let's just put it at that. And I think with these guys have already made it. So you once you've already made it, and again, I don't know their bank accounts or anything, but based on how they talk, based on their track records, these are not like people who have not had any success in their careers, right? So like they're less likely to sell because of that.
100%. And like they've made it in a space that is so still nuanced. Shout out to people who are super chatting in. Appreciate you guys. Like Yeg says, Gary stated that everyone can win the NFT space. Dan Taps, what are your thoughts? Like completely agree. And like they've already made it in such a like little tiny baby space still, because NFTs are still very, 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 very much emerging, because crypto is still emerging. It's almost mainstream, but it's not quite even there when you look at it from a true hype cycle of where it is in business. Like this is the Gartner, Forrester, like true, analyst consulting firms talking. But when you look at the market share it can capture, it is so vast. And so when you actually dial it down from crypto to NFTs to digital collectibles, it is still such a small sliver that they're only going to continue to expand, and other companies will with it, right? Like NFTs can win together. And because we're not trying to do everything, we're going to excel in one of the top spaces of NFTs, but within our own, right? Like people will do NFT blockchain gaming and they're going to crush it, but we're going to really excel in digital collectibles. And we have that massive user base to really go into whatever added verticals and added length of our legs and arms that we want to as the space grows. So like you just said, like they've already made it, not just with this venture, but with previous ventures. This is their passion. This is their baby. And it's just a matter of time until, as everything else gets adopted, VeVe is just a natural step. It's a natural way for the masses to bridge into NFTs, for people to bridge into Metaverse, for people to bridge into collecting, but in a digital format where we're all stuck in our homes and able to converse like throughout the world. Like you're on the East Coast of America, I'm on the West Coast. And this is our first time having a conversation face to face, but I've felt like I've known you for months now, right? Like how would that have happened if it wasn't for the passion through VeVe? And you're someone who like I never thought I would have a conversation with. Kind of like to tailor back to what you said before. Like I've never had a conversation with a New York Times bestseller. I've never had Gary Vee look at my tweets before. I've never thought I would ever have a conversation with Tom Bilyeu, who's one of my leader heroes. And like that's all become an ability through NFTs, through VeVe. So,
and through your hard work, and because you are willing to ask. A lot of people fail before they do, they just fail immediately because they're not willing to ask. So you miss like all the chances that you didn't take. And I think that part of the magic, Taps, and I try and encourage you too, is hey, make a list of 100 people you'd love to interview and just reach out to all of them. And even if 5 say yes, think of how much you can build with those 5 people saying yes. Because every single one of my, emails when I reach out, it has it's all these people I've interviewed. But you got to start somewhere. Hey, I've interviewed Tom. I've interviewed, and then can I interview you? I'm growing. Look at my platform. Like it's just kind of build and build. And here's a sample interview. So it's all about this idea of packaging to make you more interesting to other people. And what makes you special personally, in my opinion, is that you come from a place of authority, but with respect. And I think that's how you're going to get the caliber and the type of people that you actually want to interview, because that's what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And I did make that list, and clearly it's working because I got you on here. So, and so appreciation for you. And like, we've been talking through like our group and just kind of on Twitter. And it is cool to be able to like have some like tutelage and some understanding from someone who's kind of already done this in their own space. And, you're not just doing it with me, you're doing it with everyone else too. Like, Wendy's reaching out to people and getting tons of success there. Like we see Cavell and plenty of others who are all intermingling and getting other like big investors and things on their channels. And it's going to grow the space, and it's also going to grow us as people. So I love hearing these kind of things, but we've got a lot of people that are going absolutely crazy.
We have so much more to talk about. So the big thing that I promised everyone was, hey, what is the one, I wouldn't call it FUD. Like, what is the only, like, I only have really one concern left. And again, who knows, in like 3 months that might change. But right now I only have really one on my list is, what if they get hacked? And again, like, the team will say they have, what is this, 2-step authentication and everything. But I don't know. It's actually the number one reason why I mean, there's multiple reasons, but I would never take my collectibles off the app to immutable. I would just never do that because of what I don't remember. I think it might have been David or Dan, maybe Dan. They have no control once it's off the app. And to me, there's risk, especially when you saw that immutable got hacked. So there's risk there, in my opinion. And I need someone to complain to. And I like the idea that I can complain to people if there's a hack. If it's on, OpenSea or immutable, I can't complain to anyone. I'm out of luck, and I don't like that as much. Plus, again, that's like part of the picture. The other part of the picture is like, especially again, like even with the app, like if people are going to start staking a lot of money along with the value of the collectibles and how much they've spent, like security is so important. Like, I don't know if you have it, but I don't know if you've heard of a Titan security key. Mm-mm. I highly recommend it. So like 2-factor authentication is like here. It's really good. I'm not saying it's bad, but just like a hardware wallet, cold storage, the Titan security key that Google sells, someone would have to like murder you in order to get into your account. So the security is higher.
That's actually a really good point. I mean, we're all kind of really excited to be able to ungate, right? Like our collectibles and like truly have that NFT. And like, that's the big piece too, is like, as someone who's in NFTs and been in crypto, like there's this reassurance when I can see the actual blockchain associated with an NFT collectible, right? Mm-hmm. So like that in itself feels like a nice little security blanket where I'm like, okay, I can see what it is, where it's been, like there's an audit trail, right? And like you can see that in the app too. But we've seen people get hacked for NFTs. We've seen actual exchanges. I mean, like several exchanges, Hotbit, Bilaxy, I think a couple others this year have been hacked. And so that's a good point. Like Immutable X is a newer ecosystem that's been building out. And, it's definitely possible that something like that could happen. So there is that level of, I guess, keeping things in VeVe. Like some people I think have had things kind of get scammed away. But, when it comes to cybersecurity, it is much more advanced in some ways by having it tied to a technology company and not necessarily immediately tied to a blockchain company, right? Because it's still evolving with that. But that's also what blockchain's looking to do. There's a lot of different security blockchain that's helping kind of make that much simpler. So, I mean, that's a really good point. And there's definitely some, little thing. It's great to hear this because, like you said, that you started August 31st, and when I started in February and in March and started doing content in March, I was looking for all the flaws. I wanted to find every chink in the armor to basically not have to cover for 8 months straight one company, so I could actually say, well, it's great and I'm collecting, I'm investing, but here's why I'm still so invested in everything else, which I have other investments, but this is my biggest bag. I never thought I would pump as much money into an app of JPEGs, but JPEGs that can present all around, like, just to feed the people who are anti NFTs, which I don't think there are any in here, but like, that's what I did when I first started too.
I think people would benefit from this whole idea of comparing, contrasting, leaving collectibles in the app versus immutable. I think this is incredibly valuable. So here's how I think about it. And here's how the company thinks about it, whether they'll go on record or not. So in the app, here's how you benefit. Renting, which is I think that's the most underrated thing. Renting is it's hard for people to even this is remarkable. This whole idea of renting, that has captivated me, right? Because I'm like, wow, that is such a huge incentive not to sell collectibles. That's especially the ones that are popular. And we can go over value later, which will be fun. So that's part of it. The second part of it is if they're off the app, you don't get MCP points, right? Which can be leveraged to get drops and various other things in the ecosystem, right? And then the other thing is, if you've been in, I've only been in since August 31st. So you talk to people who've been in since 2020, they'll say, hey, I'm pretty happy I held on to Todd, let's say. That's just one example. So the other thing is potentially that could work out as well. And so when you think about all that, the value and showing it off in the app and using the utility, I don't want to understate the utility of use it. You can't use that in immutable. So the value proposition to have it in the app is extraordinary. The value proposition on immutable is mostly you think that something is going to be worth more if it's on immutable and you'll have a better sale on it. Like I don't, but I think immutable, what it does for the company is it legitimizes the company. It says, hey, we're on immutable. TikTok's on immutable. It's legit, right? We're on ETH. Everyone knows ETH. And two, it serves as a marketing vehicle for the NFTs. This
100%.
is so big time. So part of the brilliance of being an IP-based company is, in a sense, the products market themselves, right? They already have the fan bases, they market themselves. But also, part of the magic is if you're in an ecosystem like Immutable or OpenSea, you can't use the utility on those, but you can see them, and you can see on the bottom right or left or whatnot, it says VeVe. So you're saying, hey, this is very cool. And once we hit, this is why education is super important. Once people understand, oh, if I bring it back to VeVe utility, we need to make that connection. You see it here, but if it's here, huge amounts of value. You can use it for games. You can use it, whatever you might be able to use it for. We need to close some of these knowledge gaps, and that's going to be a massive, massive win. But yes, it's going to bring a whole new audience in, and I think that is going to be a massive play. So credibility and a marketing engine for the company. The fact that we've grown to this, over 1 million active users, without insane marketing, is really amazing. It just shows you. It just shows you that there's something here, and it's IP based, but it's more than IP based. I would say that the community is one of the assets, right? Like you can have, even if you have Disney IP, if there's no community, okay, like there's nothing, right? So you need all of these things, right? It's not like one or the other. And the other thing too is, and this sounds a little bit negative, but I said it in the chat, and I think it did click with Wendy and others, is, it's great we're doing this, and we love it and all this stuff, and people are invested, and it, in a sense, you're a communication tool, education tool for Ecomi, but out of your own free will. They're not paying you whatever. It's not connected. If you decided to quit tomorrow, this ship's still sailing. If I decided, hey, I'm kind of over NFTs, I'm gonna remove the app, and hopefully I wake up in 2 years and I crushed it, like that's awesome. It doesn't need us, of course. Hopefully it benefits with us, but this thing is going. This ship is going, right? This thing is going fast, and so I think that's part of the excitement too, is that people, especially people who have been in since December, or Q1, like good Lord. Like you're going to love telling these stories to people in 5 years who join, or 2 years or whatnot. Like that's going to be fun for you, because again, when I joined, I had no historical reference. I had no clue that you could have got Todd for a certain amount of dollars when it came out, or Spider-Man drop. Like I didn't know anything. And so I think the longer you're in it, the advantage is just enormous. But I think next year and the year after and the year after and the year, we're always going to say you're here early. And that's what's funny to me. We're always going to be early. In 5 years, we're still, because it's always going to be something new.
We're gonna still keep saying hashtag soon, and we're early. Which,
yes,
I mean, we really are though, right? And like, there's so many things I mean, we could have this conversation probably for 10 hours, but like you said so many things there, and like immediately I'm like, well, another thing is like Immutable is many things, and you're right. Like it is a marketing engine. It is, but it's also, like you said, it's the first adaptation and truly like verification that, hey, that argument that people have been having all year against our community is like they're not really NFTs. Well, that's out the window, right? And especially since now people don't have to come in and spend 600 gems at a time to load up. They can use Ethereum. And I talked about this recently, where like I was curious before I did the video, and I was looking through how much I've spent in Ethereum this past year. It is insane. Not like things I've bought on NFTs, and then also the gas I've spent in just Ethereum. it was like, wow, I am either dumb or or I need to find some kind of different way to buy NFTs, which Immutable X does save a lot on that gas, right? So there are a lot of people who they're ETH rich, right? And when they come in, if they look at something on a gated app, like they'll be like, well, that Spider-Man's really, really cool. But kind of like me, they don't have the security blanket to say, all right, I can't see the blockchain on it, so I'm not going to do it yet. But it is better than any other Marvel content that's out there on OpenSea. And I'm not going to pump in, dollars that a lot of people in crypto, they don't have a big bank account, but they have a ton of Ethereum and a ton of Bitcoin and a ton of, crypto. And I'm actually kind of one of them too. But like, I am more likely to buy something that says it is 0.8 ETH, which is $3,000, than I am to spend 3,000 gems in an app that is gated. Like that's just kind of that crypto NFT mentality. So
I'm so happy you said that. You know why?
Why?
This is the greatest blessing of them all, that you can't do that right now. It's the best. Because if you could, the competition would be extreme. So all the things that we complain about are actually blessings in disguise. The inability for people to cash out, the inability, again, that might sound negative and, Dan, you're disconnected, like people really, but I'm just, this is another viewpoint that in terms of how I think about things, which, it's a view, right? And I think my view is, holy crap, like let the scare people off. Let the not real NFTs, I can't cash out, I can't get drops, whatever. Let them all do that. Because if you believe in this, if you trust the founders and all the stuff we talked about, like it's an enormous advantage. Like if all those people came in, like it would be murder. My collection would definitely be cut.
Yep.
Because you're competing against people who are used to spending 1.3 million on a rock NFT that has no IP back. There's no rock cartoon or anything. Like, I don't know. Is there some sort of like, I guess Fraggle rock, right? But like, I don't.
Hold on. In the VeVe-verse, we might have rocks planned. So maybe we'll have our own. That maybe they'll allow us to spend like OMI, so the OMI rocks to compete with ETH rocks. But no, I get what you're saying. And like, I actually did a video like a couple months back. I think it was actually September, and like, and the price started pumping pretty soon after that. But I'm not saying that's what caused it, but I actually showed that DLC blogger Maddie, who is very, very well respected, very much well known in the NFT space. I had no idea that he was collecting VeVe collectibles because he's never said anything about it on Twitter. And then he was doing an interview with NFT Culture, who like I've been on their channel. They're awesome. And he was talking about it and showing it. And like, I was like, oh my God, there are tons of people who are ETH rich. There are legit whales who they don't want the presence. They don't want people to know that they are scooping things up and waiting for this to happen, because then they'll just have to pay more, right? They'll know that the prices will pump. So everyone's saying like, oh, like, MTL will cause the price to go down. Good. Like that's how I can scoop up and have some last chances, saying, well, what happens if Immutable X happens and they don't get bought up? It's not a worry, because again, that barrier to entry is going to now be alleviated because people will actually be recognizing. And if you don't think that there's going to be more awareness, because people will actually be saying, oh, they actually really are NFTs. Oh, they've been talking about a metaverse, but we haven't been giving them much notoriety or much awareness on it. But now they're NFTs. We can recognize that this is actually going to be coming to fruition, right? Like Star Atlas has shot up at the crypto gaming and possible potential metaverse, but nothing's been realized yet, right? So we'll see as like more and more comes. But I full-heartedly agree that there's a lot that can and will happen. And Real Roundy Chavez, OG says Geodude is a rock Pokemon, which is very true, as well as Onyx and Graveler and many others. So we will have our own OMI rocks in here, but we've gotten way off the things that we want.
We have so much to talk about.
I'm happy with it, because like this kind of fluid conversation, like there's many things I want to pick your brain on, because I feel like God, you're a busy man. So like,
where do we go to next? Do you want to go to? I really value. How do you value a collectible? I think is fun if you want to do that one.
I would love
to
address your amazing background and kind of get your thoughts
the physical,
the VeVe collectibles, digital collectibles, NFTs as a space, tying it with physical, and then like the value of both, as well as maybe being the potential to bundle them, because I know that you have some theories on this as well.
Yeah. So again, what I was saying before, I was a collector in the 80s and early 90s. So all these statues, you can look at a bunch of them, right? Some cool ones there. This one's, I mean, everyone's familiar with Todd. This one,
you have the blue one,
is the most. I don't know the blue one. No, I just want the black and white one. I know the blue one's cool. Mark has it. It looks awesome, but I love the black. I like the classic look. And by the way, Todd McFarlane interview next Monday, and I'm calling the episode When Todd Meets Todd, and I'm like so pumped about that. It was 45 minutes.
Todd. Dan
I
Schawbel.
love it. It's hilarious.
I love it.
So basically, I had no idea these existed. I believe this guy, if you can see him, you can't see him.
Can't see him yet.
Riso. He came out a long time ago. I believe he was 2009. A long time ago. I don't know that for a fact, but you have to look it up. It was the first one, obviously, in the app. You know that. So I had no idea this black and white series existed. There's 100 statues. Some are more rare than others. Like the Bane one is, unless you want one with broken tubes, it's pretty hard to get. It's really cool, and I can't wait till that comes to the app. But basically, I had no idea they existed until VeVe. And again, a lot of people are starting to say that about, the decon stuff, like all the, the Harley Quinn statues you're seeing pop up. Like people are starting to wrap their heads around. A lot of this stuff is modeled after physical statues and collectibles and toys and all this stuff. So it was like, yeah, exactly.
I had to pull a Dan Schawbel moment since you and
God,
collectibles. You're talking about Riso. I had to pull up my Riso.
Nice, love it. So yeah, the way I think of it is the NFTs, and I said this actually to David Yu in one of the Twitter sessions. Is the NFTs are marketing devices to the physical counterparts, much like everything is in a sense markets everything else. Like IP markets IP. Right. So a movie comes out, sometimes the comics of those first appearance characters in the movie go up in value. Right. Everything is connected. And so my theory is there are in many ways, there are fewer mints of the physical than the digital, but a lot of the digital are worth more than the physical. And so potentially you could see it where, if you go on eBay, there's 660 statues left of all of them. And a decent percentage are not mint. They have, issues with them. And so that's like worldwide. There's really not many. So if you think about Riso, there was 7,000 of them of just Riso, one of the 100 statues. And there's only about 660 or so statues of all of them on eBay. So the way I think of it is, wow, that is really scarce.
Yep.
That you have one that has 7,000 of all of them. So I put that together, and then I'm thinking we have 80 more statues to go. There is, again, we talked about Pokemon. There's no way that David Yu signed a contract saying, and he collects these too, that he only wants 20 of the 100. Can you see David Yu signing that contract? Oh, I'll just take 20. No,
not a chance.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So obviously when this guy Bane comes out, when this guy's really cool too. This is Scarecrow. So when these come out, clearly people are going to be more aware that they exist in the real world, and they're going to become more scarce. And so I like this idea. Jeremiah says the digital twin, right? And so you picture a world where these market the NFTs NFTs market these, and then potentially in the future, VeVe, maybe not with these, but with other collectibles, you get the NFT, you get the physical good, just like you saw with the serial killers, you get all the serial killers and you get the golden rabbit, or eventually one of them does the physical goods. So I do see that there is a connection between both. They both market each other, and potentially in the future, again, I'm not sure how the world's going to play out. I'm trying to play all my angles. Is maybe you have the NFT, like the first season of Batman, or all 100 statues, and then you have all 100 physical, or you have just the first series on VeVe plus the first 4, which I have. And maybe you bundle that and you take it to a Christie's or somewhere else and you sell it as a bundle. And again, if anyone told you about VeVe 10 years ago, you would have ruled it out. Now, where we have VeVe, we have millions and millions of NFTs already minted. It's hard to rule a lot of stuff out once you've just experienced everything we've experienced, even in the past year. They thought they were going to have 60,000 users this year. They have millions. So I think anything's possible. And I'm curious about how the different angles will play out. And, it's not, these are relatively, VeVe is more expensive, but I'm curious to see how it plays out. And I want to have a hand in it. And because I think they're awesome too. Like the Nightwing is my favorite. Again, it's not the most expensive VeVe NFT. I just think it's so cool. It's like the coolest thing ever. And so I got it. And I love Batman. And there you go.
And one thing to add to I like your idea of kind of taking it to Christie's or being able to kind of batch sell the physical tied to the digital. But one thing to add to that too is I think of avid collectors like yourself who physical and all about VeVe. I think of Sean from Cryptos and Comics as well. Once we have and this is something I guess I don't think I've actually spoken about this before, but I'm just you got the gears going in my brain right now. So whatever the worth is right now on Todd, or whatever the collectibles, insert, blue chip or grail or whatever that value is right now in VeVe, how much more value and scarcity will it have once digital signatures come in and you're going to have, say there's a couple thousand of those. And then let's say you go to a convention, or if you go to a comic convention and there's a signing and only, 30 of us got that. So now that's an elevated scarcity that separates from the original, let's say 2,000, or I'm not sure how many Todds there are, of those collectibles that are actually now signed. And then added layer of now, let's say you have the physical that is also signed, and you can then sell that on Christie's or something.
It's going to be you saying it is, it's so crazy because think about the levels of scarcity. Yep. You have the number of mints, you have what mint you have, hey, is this a special version of it, gold versus regular, let's say. There's literally so many, and you're going to be able to burn them. So let's say it was one of 1,000, maybe it's one of 500, and then you add in the signatures, and then you have the physical version, let's say, the amount of people who are going to be able to have all of that is going to be nothing.
Yep.
And therefore that can command such a premium to a collector. And the way I think about it, and I love this discussion, I've had it for months about what's more valuable, mint number, and we'll get into value because I think it's really fascinating, mint number versus rarity. And reality, here's the conclusion. I want a secret rare with a character on a white background. That's me. I love that. If it's not, it's harder for me to want to get it. Whereas someone else would want a crazier type cover, and that's them. And some people are I want the, 85 mint number, but some people would rather have the secret rare. And even if it's number 58,000. So I think both are right. Yep. And I think both are right because it's preference. Pags is such a great example in this community. It's not just about, how scarce something is. He likes the low mints, but it's also, he has an appreciation. He likes, for instance, the comic with Carnage. He really likes that. So he's willing, because he likes the art and maybe the character, he's willing, and he has the physical version too. He's more willing to invest in that relative to something else. So collectors are different, and obviously Sleep In and Comics and Crypto, they've notified this, and I've done more research, and this is how I think too. Like the Dr. Octopus comic that drops tomorrow, I'm like, oh my God, the secret rare doesn't have a white background with just Dr. Octopus. Shoot, I don't know if I even want this one, even though I should want this one because it's a good one in terms of the physical world.
I want every secret rare, period.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm just trying to prove. The point is that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, especially with collectibles and fandom. So, kind of connecting to something that's even more fascinating that we've witnessed recently. And did you get the drop with Wonder Woman, or did you go?
I did, yeah. And I completely echo your point. Like, we're seeing where, like, obviously rarities are kind of the go-to, right? And like the FA versus FE, but at the same time, if it's a big enough character, if it's a strong enough NFT and collectible, it's going to hold weight. And like we were already talking about that in our little group about how, hey, make sure you get Wonder Woman, make sure you get Wonder Woman. And that's what's happening is like our community is becoming so vast, it's getting so competitive that if you don't have a game plan going into every single drop, every single day that there's of a drop, and there's what, 2 to 4 now a week, then you're gonna be missing out on potential value adds, right? Like, so it's really, and like the other thing that and I want to bring it up too, is you brought up like the airdrop that just happened with the Ron English serial killers. I don't like, and this is my one, I guess, kind of FUD was, I think it was rolled out really, really poorly, worded really, really bad for like but it's the first airdrop too, but that also gives some validity to what like a true NFT project is, right? Like I've gotten so many airdrops from my other NFTs through OpenSea. And so it makes you think again, like, how do people not get bored of these? And it's that it's constantly evolving, right? So we were talking about like, if you don't think David Yu is going to not want to complete all 100 of these black and whites, what happens if they do an airdrop? And please do not FOMO into any collectibles based on this. But what happens if, let's say, there are 10 B&W, Batman's in, and they just automatically say, well, we're going to release the blue Todd, and if you don't hold, every single season so far at this point, you're going to miss out, right? But I hope they actually kind of touch on it's whoever bought them or however at that time, like the wording and messaging needs to be perfected, because if that happens with a bigger brand and us, the community, miss out, like what several did on the serial killers, I think it'll go really, really poor. But again, early. We're early. That was the first time. So, but yeah, like you got my brain turning when you mentioned all of the black and white and kind of looking at some of them, or how that can roll out. So
yeah, and taps. Here's where it gets interesting. So I put this out on Facebook actually. It's like when we think about value, and the reason why I brought up Wonder Woman to you, because it's such a great case study, right? It's like there was 4 collectibles in the blind box, and Wonder Woman was the common. Like you can predict rarities at this point. Like the most popular character is more likely to be the common. The less popular character, but that still has at least some prestige, will be the ultra rare, as an example, right? So Wonder Woman was the common. Hawk Girl. It's anytime I say Hawk Girl, like my girlfriend's like, "Did you say Hot Girl?" I'm like, "No, Hawk." I have to like emphasize Hawk Girl.
So what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, Wonder Woman is valued higher than Hawk Girl. First appearance, popular character. Popularity matters. So popularity is number 1. Right? I think we can argue popularity number 1. I'm actually getting more and more convinced that popularity might win long term, especially with the burning. Like I think popularity could end up being number 1, but there's other aspects too. So number 2, utility. So that could actually win. So VeVe recently released the what is it called? DS cars. Is that what it is?
It's the concept cars. That's a French brand.
Yes, exactly. I think it's DS cars or something like that. So yes, like I've never heard of it, etc. But hey, that could be valuable because of utility in the VeveVerse. Maybe you have to pay to drive one of those cars and it'll help you win races or something. Again, that's utility, and I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future. But that's one example. So popularity is how popular, what's the brand penetration and excitement people have around this thing. Utility, how can I, and then 3, there's only 3 in my opinion. 3 is scarcity. So you added another one to scarcity on my list, right? So in parentheses, I have mint. So how many mints and what mint do you have? Rarity, from a comic perspective, ultra rare, secret rare, etc. And then the last component that you added is this signed or not? And once you add up,
versus not too. Or do you think that'll?
I guess that's out? Utility. Okay. I don't. That's a good one. I don't. I guess I never really placed as much value on that one. Maybe popularity. Maybe that goes with popularity / appearance.
Right. So that's something I'm always trying to consider too, because when you look at the popularity, like it blows my head. Like because you're trying to figure out the strategy, right? Like when
Mhm.
you look at how low mint the Loki Gator secret rare is, the points you get for it, the fact that it's animated, the fact that it's tied to a Disney Plus show and it's selling for so low, or you look at Storm animated, secret rare, it like we know that it's the Queen of Wakanda, it's going to be in the next Black Panther 2, and yet it's so cheap compared to some other collectibles. Like things like that, I'm always considering, like, does animated really matter? I think it does. But then again, what happens if, let's fast forward, 6 months to a year and the VeveVerse is here? What happens if they flip a switch and all of a sudden half of them are animated, right? Like we've seen things like that happen with Ritmo and some others. So that's something I'm always kind of trying to consider with my strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never fully factored that in, but it's something to consider for sure. So I think once you add up all of those, that's where the value is. Again, we could change this, and again, a lot of this is personal preference and stuff. But I think rentability, right? Like that's how I'm looking at everything now. Is what's the rentability of this item, and popularity is probably popularity and utility are probably more important than scarcity, especially with burning. I feel again, things could change, but popularity, because we don't have that much utility right now, is probably my number one. But that could change so easily, right? So that's how I think about. That's how I think about it. I think that these are all variables, and I think that popularity really hit people the past week. Like it was that you couldn't ignore how important popularity was with that Wonder Woman drop.
It's fascinating too, like just kind of like bring that up. Like I'm thinking about the fact that my strategy for collecting has pretty much changed almost like every other week since I've been collecting, VeVe collectibles for quite some time. And when it comes to an NFT community or NFT project, like, we think about all the projects this year that have done really well. They've shot up and they've gone down. And if you go and look at one from like 6 months ago, that's not like a Bored Ape, or, something that's been like, I'm trying to think of like a couple that have done really well. But then now if you go look, like the community's disbanded, the value of those has shot down. So if you don't have something that is constantly ever changing and is going to continuously grow, it's going to lose traction. But with VeVe, everything is always changing, and with it, your strategy, right? Like our strategies that we're talking about today are going to be way different, especially once things like the metaverse comes into a factor. And like this kind of got me thinking, because when you're talking about popularity, the likelihood that I want to be a Loki Gator as my avatar is way lower than me wanting to be a secret rare Spider-Man, right? Like, but I would love to be a Donnie. Someone brought that up, and I think it'd be really funny if, let's say there's 5 million of us by the time VeveVerse comes out. And if there's only 5 million of us and there's 150 who have their avatar, maybe 150, because some might take it to OpenSea, maybe 100 to 150 Donnies. Seeing a Donnie in the wild of the VeveVerse is going to be like seeing a unicorn, literally. So
Yeah.
I think
I also think about items that are more likely to have the liquidity sucked out of it for something else. So here's what's really interesting. It was almost like a social experiment during the Golden Moments week. And this week was crazy for me. I blocked off 3 hours a day for those drops. That's how much emphasis I put on that week. I'm like, this is the most important week ever. Like this, whatever I do, I don't meetings, I'll push earlier. Like this is a really key week. And of course, clearly it was a key week. But what I noticed in that week told me a few things. One thing it told me is who the normal average user is. So here's the idea: is the normal average user is 100% not a whale. Because what you saw during that week, if you really dug deep into the market and buying and selling and all this stuff and the gem squeezes, is what people did is they went for the drops. They got like the R2D2 and all of these things, and all the Elsa and everything else like that during the week. And then, oh wait, Walt is coming on Friday. In order to get 330 gems, we got to sell off R2D2, which is amazing. Elsa, which is amazing. We're going to sell off all these things. So a whale, if we had a community of whales, it was a freaking whale watch, and we were watching whales go and enjoy their time here. What would happen is they wouldn't need to sell those items for gems. So for me, these are the average users has a certain amount of, again, I don't know the exact demographics, but the feeling is these are not mostly rich people, because it's much easier to just sit on the collectibles and not have to sell to buy. And that has given me an enormous, especially like listening to the community, enormous amount of empathy. And like, I feel like the responsibility for creators is really high based on who we know is actually on the app. It is not Whale City, because people are selling to have a chance at like the probability of getting a Walt is like 0. So they had to sell all those things to have a shot at getting a Walt. And then
immediately they shot up.
And then what happened is they didn't get a Walt because the probability was so low that they tried to rebuy everything, and potentially by the time they started to execute that backup strategy, everything had risen. So I learned so much about the community that week, because you could just literally, if you were paying attention, you saw that all happen.
Yep.
And so that's why I think that in terms of YouTube creators, like I think that people have a big responsibility. This is people's lives, you know what I mean? And like, we're very, like, I consider myself very privileged. So I do take that into consideration, and I'm trying to be sensitive to that when I communicate, because after that week, that really told me, you know, who the average user was, and we have to be really careful. And I also want to say one thing, because I know you've struggled with this too over the past few days, of like, you know, all the personal attacks from people in the community and all that, not on you, but like on others. We're all on the same team. We're all in this. I put this post up on Facebook. People like, we're all on the same team, man. And, you know, let's say you're the head coach. You know, I look at, you know, Dan as maybe like a forward, and like a Cavell as, you know, a point guard. Like I see, you know, a Foster as, you know, another guard or whatever. I don't know much about sports, as you can tell. The reality is,
I was like, where's he going with this?
Yeah. The reality is we're on the same team, but being on the same team means you can disagree with ideas, but don't attack the individual, right? Separate what people are saying, disagree with it. Say, I don't believe in this, and here's why, instead of saying this person is dumb or horrible. Because it's not like everyone's still trying to wrap it. People make mistakes. You know, who knows, right? Like I make mistakes all the time. You know, maybe I overhyped the Gary Vee interview. Like for me, I thought it was bigger than it was. Like, I don't know, right? And so I went on a Twitter space and I was like, here is how the whole thing went. And I took people behind the scenes and the thoughts and everything around it. And I think that, you know, that makes sense to people. And I think that we need to, you know, like I'll give you a great example. And it kind of connects to another question you were going to ask me too about, you know, during like a recession or a bear market, what happens to OMI and the collectibles? Like there was a whole thing where Cavell and Foster and everyone and Brandy were on YouTube, and I was in the chat. I'm like, I don't know about this, because they were very bullish on it during a bear market and recession. And it's not, I wasn't saying that they're bad or anything like that. I was trying to bring another perspective to the conversation. I think they're awesome. I think you're awesome. Like I like all of you people, right? So it's not about you. It's about, hey, this one little idea. You know, Cavell's right a lot too, by the way. Cavell on Elsa, when he said, you know, Elsa has, you know, 1 billion views versus other items that, like he presented the facts and he swayed me in that direction. Like, you know, Foster sways me in a lot of stuff too. Like the intent is good. The intent of Taps doing what he does is good. He's not like, it's not like these people are waking up in the morning and saying, you know, how do I screw the community? How do I like do a cash grab? Like they're not thinking about that. You know, they have families, they have, you know, wives, whatever they have, and they have their own kind of like agenda trying to make money. Everyone's trying to make their own way. And so I think that the only lessons learned is, you know, be upfront, integrity, you know, set expectations, and people are going to forget and move on and just do well by people, you know. And I think that's really the lesson learned. We're all on the same team. You know, if Cavell's right about everything he says in the video, I will be the first one to say you're the freaking man, because we're going to crush it if he's right in everything he says. Right. Yeah. But I think back to what I was saying before is, and by the way, one of the things I love that you do is you have that, you know, piece of paper where, or I don't know if it's a piece of paper or Word document, whatever you do, probably not a piece of paper, but you have a list of here's what we have to look forward to. And it's like 12 different things, right? And one of the things that I mentioned in your stream is the translations, like that one, I would pound that. once this thing's in Chinese and Japanese, geez, I mean, it's a different galaxy, to be honest. You know, if you ever seen crazy rich Asians, you know, get more people from like Singapore and Asia and in Japan, everything on board. Wow. But I do a screenshot of that and I just send it around to people because it is such a great summary to show the complete picture of the potential and where things are going. And I just think we need to be kinder to people, but you can still disagree and not like what someone's doing and just have a side conversation with them. Hey, like, I think you could have done this better or whatever. Or, you know, this idea is bad for people. I don't know, whatever it is. But I think that people need to handle things better because, you know, as much as people have their own agenda of, hey, I'm going to, you know, I'll do a paywall or whatever people want to do, like, good. Like, if they can make a living doing this and have more time, like if Taps can do this full time, if Foster, you know, if people can do this full time, that benefits everyone. And it's, you know, a good for them. Like, that's awesome if they can do it. And so I have no problem with any of that. But I do have a problem when people do personal attacks, you know, because I'm someone who was bullied my whole life. So like that hits me harder than it is, even though like my backbone is a little bit stronger because of everything I've been through. So I think being kind is really important. And going back to Gary Vee, like he promotes kindness. And like, I think that's the biggest thing he says that resonates with me is, hey, like, you know, life is short. Like, do we need to spend 4 hours in a Twitter space, like doing personal attacks on each other? Like, let's just try and win together. Like, you know, my slogan, as you know, that I'm pretty obsessed with is we've already won, just have fun.
Yep.
Like, that's my slogan. Like, I feel like, you know, we're blessed. We're, you know, we've won already just by even knowing this exists and knowing people and meeting. And, you know, you met people at Decon, you made new friends. Like, that's amazing. Like, you've won. You know, if a collectible goes down, you've made new friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, put it in perspective and just have fun. This is supposed to be fun. David Yu, he loves it. Like, if you hear him talk, he loves this stuff. It's all about encouraging people, have fun. The collectibles are content. You know, back in the days in 2006, 2007, the content was the bridge to a conversation. I recognized this very early. I took people who commented on my blog and they became my sponsors. They became my writers. Like, I recognized that, hey, you care about this, become part of it. Hey, here's some content. This is my path to interviewing George Foreman when I was like 24 or something, right? The content allows you to have something to talk about, to create the conversation, which creates the community, which is an asset of everything that we're talking about.
Sorry, Wendy's just echoing. Thank you for the super chat. The success with the Web 3.0 is more the product, which is important. The community. Communities will decide if something will have or not value. We are in this together. Shout out to the Avengers, which is our group, which you know, just to echo exactly what you're saying. I mean, like, that's what's held this community together, or like, and that's the keyword there, right? Is a community, right? Because we, you know, everyone's joined at different times, but it was absolutely nuts. Like, I joined VeVe as a sub 5,000 user in February, and I had no idea that there was even a community until I did a video highlighting VeVe and Engine. It was my very first crypto video in March. I had no idea any of you existed. And I just want to talk about it because I'm a huge nerd and I'm going to show my Batman. I thought it was really cool. And it went absolutely crazy in March and April with Uniswap and Andre covering it back then. And like, it was just absolutely bonkers when it hit over 1 cent. And then we had to ride through a very, very bearish run for months. And there was all kinds of high emotions. And those were some dark days, but also some of the galvanizing and strengthening days to see who came out on the other side, who's still holding collectibles. And that's where I think like a lot of the community is built. So like, it's, of course, there's high emotions involved, right? Like, these are investments at the end of the day, right? Like, people are making money. People are trying to make more money, whether through YouTube, through collectibles, through its, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, you know, and we're going to always have little fits of like going at each other, which it sucks to see, but when it's too much, it's too much. So I very much like your phrase. And like, I love seeing everyone come together and kind of, you know, helping each other. Like, there's been several times where like I've gotten better about it now, but before I would do a video where I was like, you know what, like, I did a lot of research on this. I think it's going to do really well. And it's going to probably do well for the OMI price, but I'm not going to buy OMI ahead of time because I don't want to think of myself as like manipulating the price, or I'm going to cover this collectible, but I'm not going to buy it because I don't want it to seem like I'm pumping it. And then I'm like, well, that's kind of dumb. I should have probably just done it, right? But at the same time, I think there is a lot of integrity that goes into this. And I do believe that content creators or people in the community, there's going to be bad actors, but at the end of the day, there's more overall integrity and just good vibes that come from all of us. And that's what will make all of us succeed. And again, it continue to attract some more of those users, right? So, or that's going to grow with our community too. So couldn't echo that enough. Thank you for the continued super chats, Danny Tro. Appreciate both of you. Great content as always, Taps. So we've been talking for quite some time, sir. And it's great because we have two people who love talking like business and research. And at our core, we're just two nerds who are geeking out for 500 people who are also nerds. And it's just great to kind of talk about the strategies and where this will go, where we've been and where we are today. I want to address one more question because there's like half of them we didn't even get through, but half that we've covered are absolutely gold. Oh man, what do I pick? What do we? What's our ending one that we want to go on? I mean, we covered a good amount, but oh man, the world currently. So, I guess where we know that it's guaranteed success. We know that VeVe is going to be here long term, but let's break it down. I guess where do you see VeVe being in 2022? You know, like we're always talking about where it'll be in 2025, like how much OMI will be, and where do you see, I guess, IP or just the company as a whole, our community, you know, that growth and what it looks like, whether it's in a bear market or the next bull market. How do you see it evolving?
I think it's an incredibly viral company. Incredibly. It's easy to explain. It's brands people are familiar with. Eventually, with 130 plus brands, is for sure something for everyone. Right now, you could argue there's pretty much something for everyone, but like it's really gonna cover everything. And with all those different fandoms, it's gonna bring in so many people, and it's gonna make people want to talk about it. And like what I was saying before, and again, like I can't prove this. I'm not saying that they should do this, but potentially, like if you rigged it so that every new user would get their first drop, I mean, this thing would be out of control. But again, this is just something I think about. It's not like something that they're doing or I want them to do. But again, it's like almost like the dopamine hit, like the drug. Like they'll want to keep going it once they have one, right?
Yep.
Because everything's been gamified. But I think that you're going to have enormous growth of users next year. Enormous. I mean, if they had a goal of 60,000 and they got millions, I mean, whatever number we guess, it could be more next year. You know, because if they were guessing and it was way more than they had imagined, you mean you might guess a number. You might say 5 million and it could be 50 million. No joke. Yep. I really, really think that it could, because of the viral nature. Because if you and the thing is, as you know, it's the more people that have it, the more people that can talk about it and share it with others. That's the key. And then there's also these like big milestone points where so-and-so celebrity admits, like a Reese Witherspoon, who's like obsessed with crypto. She admits that she just got a Wonder Woman or something. Like, then that is another boost. Like, so there's so many different ways this thing gets boosted. So I think even if Cavell was like, there's 100 million, I wouldn't even say it's not possible. I think that it could hit crazy numbers next year just because of the viral nature and because they had a small estimate this year and it blew it out of the park. And I think if you have Pokemon, if you have all the, you know, it's almost like we talk about, it's like this perfect storm, Mutable, MTL, you know, potentially Pokemon, more IP, like it's all these things that builds and builds and builds and builds. And not only do you have such a great value proposition, but you have this massive magnet that's pulling in people from all these different fandoms. Some of them are getting drops, they're telling friends, they're doing it with family. The viral nature of this, the simplicity, the not knowing that some of people not knowing it's an NFT. People don't need to know crypto. Like there's just so many ways that this could just go shoot up like crazy. It really could. And so I think no matter what we guess within reason, it'll be way more than that. So that's from a growth standpoint.
Yeah,
I think
I love it. I mean, you basically, like that's the hard part, right? Like I'm always trying to, like I've helped companies with their growth strategies. Like I've built roadmaps. I've spoken about market opportunity maps and market sizing and market share and like how to help companies scale. But when it's something this small of a space and it's so new, and like you're right, like it's an absolute viral dream for most companies what they've been able to achieve. So it is.
I think Dan Crothers has like different knob. Like this is weird too, but like he has different knobs, like in a machine, and he's like, what knob do I want to turn today? And like one of the knobs is let's like kick the media campaign into high gear. I mean, that is going to be huge. One of the knobs is, hey, let's make this, this will be in 20 languages tomorrow. That's huge. Another knob is, hey, let's get influencers who might have held back in the future to talk about this. That's like, they have so many knobs. If again, I think the conclusion, and you probably agree too, is like the platform is like getting, like it's starting to scale, because after Disney Week, they had to force, the scalability of the platform. I think if this thing could scale to 100 million, and they had Pokemon and and it was unimmutable and MTL and it, checked the core boxes that they need to really scale it. I think Dan just goes, okay, this is on, and then it gets so stupid.
I love it.
You know what? Like the part of the cool thing, Taps, and I think you realize this compared to maybe other projects too, is like this, like I'm just here for the ride too. Like, I mean, maybe I say some smart things. Maybe I help people in the community. Maybe I have collectibles and stuff, but like, this is, I mean, the sky's the limit on this thing. Like this thing is going to be, it could go crazy.
So you're saying that we're still,
it's early. A perfect storm, and we're still early. And I'll say it next year. And we're always going to be early. We're always going to be early because it's always going to be the next thing. And they need to make the next thing to keep us engaged.
On this stream, you said we're still early. It's the perfect storm.
Yeah.
You said it like how big localization and marketing will be. All these things sound very familiar. You must watch the TapsTrades channel as well, because of the mentality, all those things have been said. But I love the thought pattern and couldn't agree absolutely more. And we've been talking for almost 2 hours, but
well, you and Jeremiah have something very important in common. Is you both look at this from a more holistic top look. Like even though you are VV, content producer. I mean, Jeremiah is not, but you both have this higher level view on the marketplace that is incredibly valuable, right? Like why do I watch you? Because I don't have, first off, I like you and I want to support you, but it's also, you have this higher level market view that I'm not as privy to. And you have these historical reference points that you've been through that add value. Like Randy, who I'd love to give I think Randy's amazing. He gives me so many shout outs. I'm like guilted into giving him a shout out, but no, I think Randy's going to be remarkably valuable next. Like he's already valuable to the community. He's already, like, I've never met him, but like, seems like the nicest person ever. And I joke around with him and it's awesome, but his value is going to be so stupid next year because he has the Pokemon credibility and knowledge. He has Earth 2 and his experience in the Metaverse that he can leverage for the VeVe-verse, potentially a lot of the similar dynamics. So you have that, top collectible in the world, VeVe, but a historical, prestige and expertise. You have that. Then you have these other skills that people don't talk about. His time in the military. Like there's a reason he has enormous amounts of emotional intelligence. And everything that he's been through has set him up for incredible, like his experience in finance. There's just so many angles and skills and experiences he has that it's going to be crazy. Like people are going to beg him for insight, like even more so than now. Like I just feel we talked about the perfect storm for VeVe. Like he has the perfect storm of skills and experience that would be most valuable as we head into Web 3.0, especially in this community.
Absolutely. And there's so many people who are absolutely awesome in this community, but I completely agree. Like I never really hopped on like a ton of streams. Like I hopped on like Kyle Wilson back in the day, and like I didn't stream very early in the days, but I would hop into his, and then I started hearing about Real Randy Chavez, and I hopped into his stream, and like I became a pretty normal person, like not joining the stream, just being in the audience, because yeah, he would just on the fly talk about things very, very smart. And he has a proven track record of picking like one project and then doing well with it, right? Like it was like Tesla and then Earth 2, and like he did like high risk lending. Like I know a lot about Randy from his streams, but also like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I met him in person. We're more than homies. We're homies. We're roommates at Decon, and he's amazing in person as well. And yeah, there's some pretty incredible people here, but I highly believe that you're also one of them. I mean, a lot of the value that you've brought on this stream as well as on Twitter in the community has been really, really incredible. And this has been a great conversation. Like I could not be more thankful that you took the time out of your busy and crazy schedule to actually hop on my stream and to just nerd out with me for a little bit and talk kind of big picture things, because it's very easy to get so stuck in the now and then like zoom back out and kind of see where we're going and as well as where we've been. Right. So I just really appreciate your time. And, and real quick, I did want to show people.
I was going to say, one of the things about you, Taps, is people want to be understood. And when you highlighted my interview with Kevin Smith, I was like, he gets what I'm trying to do. Right. And to me, there's nothing like being understood. Once you're understood, that's how you can build connection. And I think that it's something that you're good at. You get it. You get it. Right. And the nicest message. So after the Gary V, I just want to point this out. Like, I won't say who it is, but, I've received, as someone who writes self-help articles and books, you get really nice messages. The nicest messages I've received this year that like almost put me to tears was someone messaged me on Twitter and they said, "You're an unsung hero of this community." And it was like the nicest, because I had, I got beat up a little bit on Twitter. It was because this person recognized that I was putting my reputation on the line for 15 years.
Yep.
To be able to mention this company in this conversation with Gary. And this person smart enough to say it, and then I guess brave enough or nice enough to reach out and say something that nice.
Yeah, and to echo that, I mean, like the fact that you did that, like the whole community should realize how vast that was. Like I think I touched on the stream too. Like this was, I think, your 6th interview with Gary Vee. So like you've known him for many, many, many years. And so that is a relationship that for you to take the time to pull up your passion and then discuss it openly,
especially with him and have a competing product.
He has more than one. He has Candy and Recur, right? So like he's a competitor in the space and in other blockchains as well. So, but he's also an investor in Mutable X, which yay. But like to do that takes a lot of gall and a lot of passion, but also a lot of trust in the people that you're interviewing to maintain those relationships and actually know who you can do it with. Like, I think someone asked me like, oh, is he going to do that on every interview? I was like, absolutely not. Why would he? But at the same time, he's a smart guy. That's how he's built his entrepreneurship up to this level, is like, he knows when he can show his passion. He knows where he can help the community. And we're absolutely better for the fact that we have you to do that as the community continues to build out. So like that was really, really substantial. And then what happened? It got immediate results, right? Like Gary Vee came on and did a Twitter for all of his over a million, I don't know how many subscribers he has on Twitter, for him specifically to talk about VeVe, to clear the air with the interview. And so when you look at it from like a marketing spectrum, it crushed. It had a big effect, right?
146,000 views.
Yeah, absolutely killer. So I mean,
but the key is, I can only take credit for sliding it into the interview. The community gets 100% of the credit for pushing it to him to make him respond. So I'm the door. I think that I was the door opener. Let's say I kind of raised it in an interview and trigger people. But the community for sure, that video, I don't get any credit. The community made that video happen, and so good on them. And again, as long as people do things in a respectful way, you can be we were talking about it today about passion. Like we're talking about, people are so passionate about the community. I think passion is awesome. Like you can hear by my voice, like I'm pumped, right? Like I'm passionate, but passion gets toxic when it becomes bullying and personal attacks. And so I think that just based on what we've seen this week, this is a really key thing. And the thing I was going to mention before is we have so many newbies. Think about thousands and thousands of people we're onboarding a week. we want to behave and be nice and respectful, because these people, we want them to say, hey, you want to be part of this. We're respectful. We're nice. And the drawback to, being toxic and bullying and doing personal attacks is enormous for the community right now, because you're onboarding so many people. And so we don't want just people to log in. An active user on VeVe is someone who logs in three times a month. We don't want that. We want people to log in like every day and join Twitter spaces and all this stuff. And the only way you're going to do that is if you treat people with respect. And the only other thing that I want to do is I got to shout out VeveVerse.com for sending me this hat. I'm a man of my word, and he sent it to me, and I appreciate that.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that's brilliant that you echo that. Like, we've all been in it for so long that we do need to respect the fact that some people are coming in every single day that are new, right? So they're not experts, and they're looking, and like a lot of our content is pretty high level. It's like mostly for people who've been in the know or are coming up to speed. So like I've seen like a content creator who actually created like a pricing on it. And to be fair, it was really all over the map. Like, he didn't really do much research. So like, but people jumped on him, and his reaction was him to say, well, this community is terrible and I'm probably going to steer people away. I'm like, oh no, that's not what we want to do. Right. So if someone comes with a question where it seems so obvious, or like, it may have taken like just 1 second to research, again, let's not forget that other people are new. So, maybe that's where we started and how we looked when we first jumped in. Right. So 100%. Couldn't echo that more, but we're definitely crushing the time. But I did want to say,
we did 2 hours. Wow.
We did 2 hours, but everyone,
make
crazy. Sure you are friends with Dan Schawbel on Twitter. Make sure you are subscribed to his channel as well, and click that notification bell, which I will. And you can also check out his website, see some of his books, some of the companies he's worked with, look at his courses. I mean, he's absolutely stellar. And I am very happy to have had you on the channel, Dan. And thanks so much for the time. It's been absolutely amazing.
You're a good man, Taps, and it's been amazing getting to know you, and you're leading the way. And again, you can shout out a lot of other people who are as well, and everyone can contribute something. And that's what's so great about the time we're living in right now is, we're early, we say, but it's everyone can play their role. And if you add value, if you think of, how can we, cheer someone else on, even as simple as one message, hey, congratulations on getting the drop, even if you didn't get it. Like, as Reese said, actually, a few hours ago on his live stream, like that's why we're here, right? Like, I know there's a competitive nature to all of this, right? And there will be more, especially with the Master Collector program. But at the end of the day, people are people, treat them with respect, and cheer people on, because everyone will have their turn. Think of, if there's going to be 60 drops a week, if there's going to be multiple drops simultaneously, if there's going to be 130 plus fandoms, there's going to be something for everyone. Everyone will have their turn, and you're all winners. It's like almost like the whole thing with millennials. Everyone gets a trophy. Like, we all have trophies here,
participation awards.
Regardless of how large the trophies or how many, like, I view everyone as a winner for, being smart enough to notice something when other people might not have been privy to it.
Absolutely. Well said. And again, thank you for hopping on the channel. Thank you everyone for hopping on to hear us talk, and for, chatting in the comments. Again, you know where to find Dan. If you have any further questions, I highly recommend you follow him and check out his content as well, because he's having some great conversations, and I think those are just going to continue. So, Dan, any last thoughts?
Yeah, Todd McFarlane next Monday, 4 a.m. Eastern.
Yes.
And when Todd meets Todd, and I do mention the Todd father, and it's funny. And again, there's nothing, he doesn't say anything. It's just his facial reaction is spoiler alert. But it's awesome. And it's just a good conversation. You'll walk away, because we do talk about his project with Steve Aoki, but you'll walk away, like I walked away, I'm like, wow, this guy, after 45 minutes, he's so smart. Everything he's been thinking of. He talks about, his, how he differentiates versus Marvel and DC, and his own leverage, and why he's in all these different businesses. Like, he's just, you will gain a newfound respect for this man. and it's awesome. And he's, you know, iconic in the community as well. So it's like a fun thing. And that was the first one of the three. So Kevin Smith, I had already set up the interview. Gary already set up the interview. This is Todd McFarlane. I did it because I did it for the community, as in the intent was, hey, this would be fun to show Todd, right? Yep. So that's a little bit different. I thought it would be really cool because, you know, Todd's so iconic in the community, to talk to the man himself and just see his reaction, even though he's doing his own project.
Love it. And so, yeah, everyone look for Todd when Todd meets Todd on Dan Schawbel's channel. I'm sure we'll see it on Twitter as well. But again, thanks so much, everyone, for hopping in here. Thanks so much, Dan. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe for further content. And it's been great chatting with you, Dan.
You got it, my friend.
Cheers.
Happy collecting, everyone.
Happy collecting.